my brand shopping list, which is a list of all the sort of brands I've worked with over time. Anybody recognize that? We created that brand. What is a brand? It's very simple, really. There are two reasons for buying something: emotional reasons and rational reasons. If I take it out of a little bag or an Aldi bag, you have another very different perception of banana. Same thing, but a different view. Weird, isn't it? So this is backfilling a story. You're given something and have to fit it into the entirety of what the place is called. So understanding what you really sell is very, very important. How would you describe what you sell? If you think like a customer, then you get the inner story. When you take those products and put them into being brands, you have to sell them from a different perspective. Be careful before you put your personality into your brand. I think.
Steve, what about the brand of David Beckham? We thank ICA Consulting and Paulina for doing the visuals and the everything. That's why that funny little thing is pointing at us. So that will be posted on ICA Consulting YouTube channels. We're pretty used to this now, so thank you for the opportunity, Paulina and Steve. Our esteemed speaker is a partner of the same business. So the link will be shared, and then I can then share it with you all. So the highlight of today's talk, as Steve gets some interesting goodies out the bag, the journey through brands, including their value and the enormous commercial advantage. We'll kick off with what is a brand, how to stay true to it, how to look after it, and how to get customers from buying our brand. We all have a brand in this room, and Stephen will tell us how to take it to the next level and beyond. Some of you know him already. Spent years working for the UK Government Special Services Group. I'd like to know a bit more about that. Not MI5, I don't think, but you never know. They do even they have a brand these days. He was joined JHP Design in 1986 and became the chief executive in 2002. He repositioned Selfridges. He represents Samsung, Ralph Lauren, World Duty Free, Pret a Manger, Heineken, British Airways, might be a bit of a Concorde coming out in a minute, BMW, John Lewis, JFK International Airport, Armani, Prudential, the Royal Navy Lifeboat Institution, the Tower of London, to name a few. A regular commentator on design, access and media, and all about when not working, or when he's not working, he is a banjo player, enjoys painting, writing books, and saltwater fly fishing.
Yes.
So how many days in the week is there for this terrific chap? Steve Collis. So we start, and there's a bit of a manual going on because we haven't been able to do a PowerPoint, obviously, because it's a restaurant. And there is a bit of a working template here with some props. And I will sort of crash in with a couple of questions. Ooh. But it's your lunch, so stick your hand up rather than wait right to the end to talk about something that Steve may have used in his manual on chapter 2 or chapter 3. There's 10 salient major macro points, but put your hand up, raise a question, and we can canter on through the talk. So, what is a brand? How to stay true to it? How to look after it? And how to get customers to buy it is a general theme. Steve.
That was a build-up, wasn't it?
More or less.
Whoa. Thank you very much. How you doing, Well, thank you very much indeed, Tom. That was wonderful. So when it was first suggested I do this talk, I thought, fantastic. I'll get up a wonderful case study of a project, put it up on the big screen, and talk through the sensorial world we create. You know, we create images, we create buildings, we create the things that are within them, the things that are sold, every aspect of what a brand's personality is. Unfortunately, Simon said, we don't have a screen. You're going to have to think of another way of doing it. So what I decided to do was put a shopping list together. Here it is. My brand shopping list, which is a list of all the sort of brands I've worked with over time. And then I went shopping to buy bits and pieces, and then I'd use them to trigger information on the things we did for those brands. So I went to this store here. Anybody recognize that? Yes, good. We created that brand and the complete change of the store. So that's always a good start. Selfridges, you can't go wrong. Right. What is a brand? It's very simple, really. I mean, you can get huge manuals on brands, and there are endless sort of learned documents. But very simply, if you think of a brand as a person, let's take Simon. Simon cycles. Simon plays squash. Simon wears very elegant suits. He's got a great tone of voice. You know where he lives, or you might know where he lives. You might know what he does. You might know his relatives. All these things form who this person is. And what you can define a person as being, you can also look at a brand, everything it consists of, what it sells, how it speaks to its suppliers, how it speaks to its customers, how it packages up what it sells, whether it sells something that's virtual or digital or something that's physical. Every element makes up what that brand is. The difference between a brand and a purpose is that a brand exists for a purpose. A brand and a person is that a brand exists for a purpose. 90% of the time it's to make money. Other times it's to influence people, institutions, charities, countries. We branded all of them. So that's all you've got to think of. These institutions, the brand is a representation, a complete collected presentation of what a business is, it can be, and it can stand for. So, with that in mind, I will now go to the shopping bag and pull out a couple of items and start our journey through understanding how we go about creating brands. And the two first things I'm going to pick up are, one, a Porsche 911, and second, a banana. Okay, right, let's compare the two. What you need to know about any selling process to someone or understanding of your customer, very simply, is this. There are two reasons for buying something: emotional reasons and rational reasons. Now, you'd think, rationally, a banana, very healthy, good for you, lots of zinc in it. A Porsche, marvellous, fast, aspirated engine, 550 brake horsepower, and all the rest of it. But when you research a bit further, strange things start to happen. Why do men, and I'm not saying that on a prejudicial level, because 90% of Porsche 911s are sold to men, quite young ones with lots of money. Why do they buy their Porsches? They will tell you it's because of their fabulously aspirated engines and overhead camshafts and all the rest of it. But when you really dig deeper, I think you'll find things are a little different. What they really buy it for is for to be seen in them, actually. They don't go much faster than 20 miles an hour around London anyway. So you get in your Porsche, you drive around, hopefully, if you're a man, with a very attractive lady sitting in the passenger seat. So really, despite these rational reasons for buying one, there are big emotional reasons behind. Okay? So you've got to think about that when you're advertising this brand. You don't show its internal working parts. You show it zooming along, huge towers, gorgeous sunglasses on. That's what you talk about. Now, the banana, you would think, very different. Got to be a rational purchase, hasn't it? Here's the thing, though. See the little sticker on the banana? If I offer you a banana and I take it out of a Waitrose bag or a Harrods food hall bag, you will have one perception of what the banana is. If I take it out of a Lidl bag or an Aldi bag, you have another very different perception of the banana. Same thing, but a different view. Weird, isn't it? What's in a name? Waitrose, Lidl. I mean, to be honest, the Germans know because they all shop at Lidl. That is exactly the same bloody banana. But over here, different markets, different perceptions. So that's that. What's in a name? Some people think that branding is just coming up with a name and a logo for something. Well, it's much more complicated than that. But names are really important. Right, I'm going to hop across the Irish Sea now.
Is the Porsche example just on more to do with image?
Yeah, completely, yeah. They're very emotive cars, actually.
Yeah.
Now, some people won't be seen dead in one, and some people won't be seen dead in anything else. So it's all about taste and image and,
Great round the track.
Pardon?
Great round the track.
Great round the track, great round the M25 back in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah, they are marvellous pieces of machinery, but it's what they stand for. Names, staying with names for a minute. The next thing I've got is a couple of pages from a handbook you can buy, believe it or not, for a hotel we designed in Dublin. It's called the Marker, and it's in Grand Canal Square. It's a wonderful hotel. And we met the development team behind it, and they wanted us to do everything, and we did everything. We did the architecture of the building, we did the interiors, we did the restaurants and positioned the restaurants at different types. We did the spa, we did the uniforms that the staff wore, we did the chocolate on your pillow and the linen, everything. The one thing we couldn't quite get out of them whilst we were working, when they were great to work with, it's a very prestigious project, was what they wanted to call it. And I said, we'll come to you with that. We'll get to that point and we'll work out what the title should be. So one day I'm sitting with them, chatting away about how the project was going. And I put some logos up of some restaurants just to look at, fonts and formats of how the letters should work. One of the directors, top man, he looked at me and he said, I like that. I said, you'd like what? And he pointed at a logo for it's a little obscure restaurant in Florida called Mile Marker 88. And he said, I like that marker. I want to call it the Marker. I looked completely baffled. I said, what has that got to do with anything we've been building so far, the history of the Grand Canal, the whole... Oh, but I said, no, I like it. That's it. So I was suddenly stuck with this name. He wanted to call it the Marker, and the Marker it became. Off I went. We all went off, researched away, and found that the Grand Canal, which goes from the Atlantic all the way across to the Irish Sea, has lots of locks in it. And when it arrives in Dublin, you get to Grand Canal Square, where the Grand Canal comes in. But along that route, there are little steel posts at each lock, which are the marker posts for the journey across the island. Got it. So this is backfilling a story. You're given something and have to fit it into the entirety of what the place is called. So if you look here, there's a page from the brand manual, has its logo and colorways and everything else on it. And here is the poem we wrote to go with the name that the guy had given us to go with the hotel. There is a path from coast to coast that brings us to that longed-for post, with spas and bars and plumped-up linen, the spacious rooms and pools for swimming. The locks and birds that guide the way anticipate the end of day, the pumping showers and bedside flowers, a show to while away the hours. The fields and farms, despite their charms, lead on into the evening's arms to meet and greet, to drink and eat, or simply rest our weary feet. Born from the Burren, water to water, Atlantic father, Irish daughter, at journey's end as day grows darker, we spy with joy the final marker, i.e. the hotel in the square. There's no limit to the output we end up coming up with when we have to brand a place. If it's poetry, if it's music, if it's costumes, we'll do it. So there we go.
Steve, how was that poem showcased? Was it part of the marketing material?
Yes, it was. It was up in the hoardings whilst the building was being done.
Yep.
It was in the little, the little books, the little bookside book you'd get by the bed. And just one little element of output, because we have to think about absolute everything that's being produced.
Excuse me.
Yes, I did actually. Thank you very much. It could have been somebody else's, but that one was mine. Right, so the great thing about the guy who said, I want to call it a marker, the weird thing is what he said, I thought, you know, he's got something, but I couldn't work out what it was. And then we backfilled the whole story and it worked out well. And I think this brings us on to the next point, which is understanding what you really sell is very, very important. And therefore, I now go to my shopping bag and I pull out Concorde. And we worked with BA quite a lot, including the last couple of years of Concorde. You don't see it as a bigger one. There we go. And a spring-loaded lemon squeezer. There we go. So what are these two got in common? They're both cases where I think, rather like the guy with the marker, their chief executive really understood what their brand was. And what your brand is sometimes something more than just the stuff you sell. So I think of when I was dealing with BA, dealing with their branding, the chief executive said to me, I won't tell you which one, it's a while ago. I said, what do you think you really sell? He said, well, I'll tell you what. We sell World Traveller, which is economy, World Traveller Plus, which is premium economy. We sell business, we sell Concorde, and we sell first class. I said, hang on a minute. Aren't the last two the wrong way around? Surely isn't Concorde your most premium product? It isn't. And this is what he said, is no. People on Concorde are going places in 3 hours. People in first class, they don't really care how long it takes them to get anywhere. If we fill up the 16 first class seats on a 747, we don't need anybody else on the plane. That's how that's how premium it is. I said, really? Surely these people in their own private jets? He said, sometimes that can be a pain in the arse. He said, with us, you get the full service, the total treatment. He said, think of it this way. When the Queen goes from St. Paul's to Buckingham Palace or vice versa, she does not go in a Lamborghini. She does not go in a Ferrari. She goes in a horse and cart, a very, very expensive one, because she can spend as much time as she likes traveling from one to the other. And she knows everybody else will be there for her. He really understood that, understood his business, and he thought like a customer, and that's the secret. If you think like a customer, then you get the inner story. Lemon squeezer. Meanwhile, have you heard of a company called Lakeland? Yeah. They flog these and all sorts of strange other devices you have around the house. And I was up there, we did some stores and delivery systems and stuff and online stuff for them. And I said, how would you describe what you sell? And it was just the greatest response. He said, it's quite simple. He said, in your kitchen. I said, yeah, how do you know my kitchen? He said, in your kitchen, here's that drawer. It's got all that stuff in. It's got the string and the small cheese grate you've got in a cracker. But you can't, and the bottle stopper. You can never quite get yourself to chuck them out. It gets fuller and fuller and fuller. I said, I do know that. He said, yeah, we sell all the stuff in the drawer, he said. And I just thought it was a brilliant answer. So there we are. What if you sell stuff nobody wants? This is an interesting point. Here is a washing machine. Here is an insurance policy. It's not actually a piece of paper wrapped up with a pink thing, but nobody wants a washing machine. They want to have clean clothes, nicely pressed, good fashion. Nobody wants an insurance policy. They don't want the house to burn down. But if that's the case, when you take those products and put them into being brands, you have to sell them from a different perspective. And please don't sell the pension with two old gits like me, me and my wife walking down the beach together. No, people don't want to see that. And don't do this. Where's this? The parachute. I haven't got a parachute. No. I love Samsung, one of the nicest brands you've ever worked with. Yeah, sure. But the trouble is that they put all this design into the thing. Well, what if you live in the Cotswolds with, horse brasses on your beams? You've got to sell the benefit, not the thing. That's key. The benefit is your fabulously clean, fresh-smelling clothes that you look good in, sex sells, when you're walking around, and the fact that you've got a beautiful home, or you've got a beautiful holiday, or you're relaxing with a gin and tonic, not the clauses of the document.
Steve, is that why you're washing up liquid washing powder? It's lots of cute-looking girls and boys running around with white shirts on.
Yes, short answer. Look. Did anybody see an ad back in the day? It was a terrific ad. This young lad comes back from a festival, and he comes into the house and he's got all his stuff, and his mum's lying on the sofa. And she goes, "Oh, you're back, are you?" He says, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I'm going to wash my clothes." Well, you stick him in the machine then. Go on, off you go. Put the purse in. Yeah, all right. And he said, "So what were the bands like? What was the whole thing like?" And he said, "Well, Mum, to be honest, you just wouldn't understand." She said, "All right," she carried on watching the television. As he's just going upstairs, she said, "Of course, back in my day, we didn't wear any clothes." So, absolutely, so lifestyle and lifestyle all tied together with this. Get away from the washing and make it about what your life's all about. So that's that. Now, a big contentious subject here. I think all of these might be. Be careful before you put your personality into your brand. As the next thing from the shop, here's a book. I think he's had a bit of a tough time recently doing that. A bit hard. Some people have done it very well. Richard Branson, ups and downs, but still, and he maintains. It's interesting with him is he maintains his values. He maintains the values of what Virgin are. You know, if you're going to getting a train with him or getting a cruise with him, it's going to be funky, it's going to be liberal, it's going to be interesting. He sort of managed to do it. Steve Jobs did it. Others have struggled with it a bit. I mean, James Dyson was so vociferously anti-Brexit. Vociferously in favour of Brexit, I beg your pardon. I know people who buy his products because he was so fond of Brexit, especially after he moved his all his factories to Singapore. Now, my political views are neither here nor there. This is all about what's best for your brand in this regard. So, it's an important consideration. If you're going to use your personality to be part of it, think very hard because it's a journey you've got to stick with. We all remember Gerald Ratner. Does anybody remember Gerald Ratner?
Gerald Ratner. Don't buy this rubbish.
The thing is, I make lots of money because people buy all this crap that I sell. That was it. It was game over. So terrible. So so be careful with your personality. And the other thing you've got to do is, one of the advantages of individuals, to be fair, is that individuals tend to have their fingers on the pulse. If you become so big and moribund as an institution that you miss that point, that you think, well, it's always going to be good, isn't it? Because this is what we do and they're the best at making this stuff, it can go horribly wrong.
Steve, what about the brand of David Beckham, who can't seem to do much wrong, compared with Ronnie O'Sullivan, perhaps?
Well, indeed, and the Beckhams have full brand management teams.
Do they?
Oh yeah. It's a completely manufactured life. Quite a cage to be stuck in, actually, almost like a royal family. You've got to live within certain rules and so on. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be them myself. But they're well managed. They're well done.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
What about brand of Meghan Markle?
Steve?
Oh, hang on.
Meghan Markle's brand.
Meghan
what do you think
Markle.
of that? Looks like need a bit of your help there.
Yes, but we live in the UK and we have our media and we have our newspapers and so on. They're as much responsible for forming her brand as anything else. That's a really complicated one, to be honest. Could one help? It probably could, but up against such a wall of what's the word? Prejudice, I suppose. Yeah.
Does she need children?
I've never asked her.
I think if she went,
Yeah. She is a brat.
if a new series of Suits was to be made, David, Dr. David, and she would reappear in Suits, that's the revival of her brand. Steve.
I think she'd do better.
Yes.
Did well in that.
Yes, she did. Look at that lovely little Nokia phone. Beautiful, fantastic little object. Film canisters, Kodak, Nokia, and a huge music video retailer we were working for once. absolutely massive. And I was on my way to a presentation. I won't tell you who they are. It wasn't Virgin. I was on the way to a presentation. They wanted us to build a 15,000 square foot CD store, basically. And on the way there, I came across this strange thing in the newspaper, which is an advertisement from a brand that was being created called Spiral Frog. If you know what Spiral Frog is, it was a load of chaps from Sony, Paramount, I can't remember who else, who were setting up what was essentially to become, or taken over by, God, what's the thing we all listen to music on? Spotify, exactly. And so I went along to this meeting, to this presentation, and I said, 15,000 square feet selling CDs. Do you not think that your real expertise is in music, film, and entertainment, and not selling little discs, or be they vinyl, or CDs? That this huge space you're going to be creating could be meaningless in 2 or 3 years' time. And they gave me that sort of, look, you're very good at decorating things. Don't tell us how to run our business, Well, fair enough. I didn't want to tell them how to run their business, and they were gone in 3 years. But it's that head in the sand attitude you sometimes come across in businesses. So within a business that's got a brand director, and a lot of businesses do now, should constantly be looking at that and saying, what is it we really are? Not what are the bits that we sell, and how can I get a better price out from somewhere else? It's a very important consideration. Right, where we got to?
Clearly, there is an AI evolution that's going on. There's a technological evolution that's actually going on, and some of the brands are really hiding their heads into the sand. How do you go around this with branding? So you can't use the AI.
Oh, AI.
Yeah, to create your brand completely, for example. Would you do that? Would you not do that? How can brands get their head out of the sand and use AI sustainably?
And we had a talk on AI 2 lunches ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
You did, yeah. I was guessing the AI thing would come up. I thought it would come up a bit later. So the best way to respond to that is via a little parable. Okay, so the thing with AI is who was I talking to earlier on about AI? I think you and I were talking. Ken. Was it? Yeah. It's very useful. It's very useful for sorting stuff out and getting things lined up. It's not that clever at coming up with things, coming up with new ideas. And I saw this little clip of an artist being challenged by somebody to paint a picture in his style, of a horse. And then the AI would paint a picture in his style, and we'll see which one did him better. Okay, so the guy's on this stage, and there's a terminal, and the compere says go. So the artist starts scribbling away on his piece of paper, and the terminal starts creating the image. Right, so I've got it here. Here is the image that the terminal created. Whether you like the art or not isn't the point. And the artist looked at it and said, that's astonishing. That is exactly in the style that I paint. It's interpreted my painting techniques, my brush strokes, and everything perfectly. So the AI manager guy was dead chuffed with all of this, and he said, fantastic. So is yours similar? Is yours as good? He said, I'll show you mine now. Hold a second. And he held up his picture, and he looked at the terminal and said, you never thought of that, did you? So, that's the thing. Ideas, creativity, going sideways. That's the thing. So AI, I think, is incredibly useful. But
Was that one, Steve, something to do with Lloyd's Bank and the horse?
yeah, sort of. Could easily be. Very common. But I think that's the point. It's up to you. We are the ones in control. We're the ones who come up with the ideas. So, yeah, God, I'm tired after that. I think I need a drink. Right, where are we? Absolute vodka. Yeah.
It's been open since Christmas.
And another brand of vodka. There was no vodka in this one, but I've got them here because
Not heard of that one.
I'm going to tell you all about it.
Thank you.
Fascinating. What do you do if your product is exactly the same as everybody else's? And before anybody even starts, if you take any premium vodka, 40% alcohol by strength, not flavored with bison grass or blackcurrant, chill it to the perfect temperature to drink vodka at, nobody can tell them apart. Now, I mean, there might be one super duper taster or nose down in all that might be able to pick them apart, but nobody can. The only way of defining them as being different from each other is by brand, by what it stands for, by what it means to people. Okay? So if you look at a few, Beluga, very good Russian vodka, is simply differentiated because it's associated with caviar. Cracking idea, that's very good. Russian Standard, I thought this was a... Russian Standard is a brilliant one. Russian Standard said, well, Mendeleev, who invented the periodic table, wrote to the Tsar and said, this is the perfect formula for vodka. This much water. I thought that was quite clever. You know, he takes all the opposition out of the equation. Belvedere, which is Polish, talks about the purity of its water. And Grey Goose, which is from France, is all about it being aged in old cognac barrels. You see, they have all these stories. But this one's an absolute corker. It's brilliant.
I like that.
I don't know who came up with it. It looks like a big hip flask, yeah?
Yeah.
And what it is, the most successful Spitfire squadron in the Second World War was the 303. And they were all Polish lads, every one of them.
Yeah.
And the story goes that at the end of the airfield in Lincolnshire, they grew potatoes. And from those potatoes, they made their own vodka. And this brand was Polish 303 vodka. I mean, who came up with that? I wish I had. It's sensational. Nonsense, of course, but
Where can you buy it, Steve?
Selfridges. that's why it came in the bag. There we go. There you go. So good. Nothing wrong with it.
It's not in my local establishment.
No, it's great. It's very expensive, of course. It all comes in the bottle.
Too well, then.
But the origins of this differentiation go back to the late 70s and 80s. At that point, the two big vodkas were essentially Stolichnaya and Smirnoff. They were the two. And then this small Swedish company said, we want to really push our product worldwide. So they contacted TBWA, who were a sort of branding and advertising agency back then, and said, what can we do? How can we make ourselves different from everyone else? And if you go to Selfridges and buy the book, which is here, you'll get the whole absolute story. And it was phenomenal. And basically what it said was, all you lot are drinking vodka. If you drink our vodka, you're a creative intellectual. That's what it was saying. Because the ads were sophisticated, complicated. You had to look for the bottle in the beautiful photography. They used best artists, graphic designers. And then what was fun was they decided, well, let's stick it in a new bottle. So they got a really good packaging designing firm in. And we did quite a bit of work with Absolute. And they designed this bottle. Now, they put the bottle out for research. And the research came back. And the results were diabolical. They're awful. The bottle's too short. People won't be able to reach it when they go to pour a vodka from the tray in front of you. The word absolute is terrible. It sounds so strong that people would be collapsing in the street. It's printed onto the bottle, doesn't have a paper label, which makes it very hard to see it when it's on a shelf. And they presented these findings to the owner, who said, pardon my French, he said, I don't give a shit. He said, I think it's a great bottle, let's have it. And they did have it, and it has been, to this very day, incredibly successful. So you've got to be careful with research. Research can be very informative, but you've got to read between the lines. The great David Ogilvy, if you've ever heard of him, one of the great men of advertising, said you should use research like a drunk uses a lamppost. Yeah? Okay. Occasionally for support, but never for illumination. Never let it give you ideas. Only use it to back up your ideas. And if it doesn't, make it up. That was the way. Yeah, so different markets, different products, different stuff. What does your brand mean in different markets? That's an important consideration. Do you know how many Starbucks there are in the UK? Don't know.
Thousands.
About 1,000, actually. Do you know how many there are in Italy?
Hundreds.
No, 20, and they're all in airports. Starbucks. And that's because typical size of a Starbucks cup in the United States, typical size of one of my favorite clients, Lavazza from Turin, where they drink coffee. Exactly. Yes, I'm trying to be non-prejudicial here. So
Well, no, don't be.
you lean into it, go on. Yeah, that's great. So here's your espresso, and here's your gallon of milk. To be fair, they're born of different sort of roots. The Americano is called Americano because they drank lots of filter coffee. You keep filling it up all day in your office and so on. So that was that world. But those lads from Seattle really did make a bit of a mess of it all, to be honest. I would agree with you. So when I'd go over to Turin to meet the Lavazza family, and you meet the family, and I get up at 5 a.m, fly to Turin, get there for a meeting at 9:30, absolutely knackered, present all morning. Then in the afternoon, you had to go into a warm room and get a PowerPoint presentation of feedback. But you'd go for lunch with them first. And when you go for lunch, pasta, cotolette, and all the rest of it. But then you wouldn't sit down, and you'd had a glass of wine, because you always had a glass of wine with them. Then you'd get up, you'd get up from the table, and you'd go to what's called the bar line. Lean on the bar line. And they'd give you an espresso. They didn't talk about shots or stuff. They just put a lot of it in a little cup. And then you whack it back. And then you survive the afternoon in the meetings, But I remember a real moment of understanding of stuff. The commercial director of Lavazza saying to me, "You see, Steve, the problem is the rest of the world seems to think that coffee is a drink. It's not a drink. It's a sort of whacking in the arm, get going. It's a stimulant to get you going for the day. So understand what your stuff means in different markets. Very important." What have I got to now? Number 10, probably the final one, the sort of holy grail of branding, is how to completely reposition a brand or even reinvent one. And the heart of this is getting to what we call the thematic platform. The just do it is just do it. No, thank you. Get to the think different. Correct. Get to that moment. Now, these things are not necessarily customer facing. Most thematic platforms are internal. The team reflect on them constantly when they're trying to establish the way forward for something. So back in 1989, 1992, Selfridges, Sears did at the time, they were thinking of closing it down. They were going to take the ground floor of the store and turn it into little high street shops, and everything up above was going to be turned into offices. The board of Selfridges, who reported up to Sears, made one last desperate plea that they were going to go and turn it back into what Gordon Selfridge had tried to make it in the first place back in 1890, whatever it was, which was the greatest place to go on earth. There's always something going on there, lots of activities, music, action, as well as the products itself. So we put this huge document together to go and see Sears, to get them to give us doesn't sound much now, but it was then 95 million quid to invest in completely repositioning the store, the design of the bag, which is still the one you want to take your washing to the laundrette in. So rather that one than a Sainsbury's. Everything about the place. We turned all the escalators to run parallel with Oxford Street, because the other ones used to go that way for when your horse and cart dropped you off, your horse and carriage. It was an enormous project. But the thing we knew what everything in it was, and then we were trying to, how do you sum up this big idea? And Peter Williams, who was a very dry financial director, sort of walked in the room and said, "You lot still at it?" In those days, it'd be people smoking Marlboros and drinking wine the early hours of the morning. And "You still at it?" He said, "Yeah." And he had heard the conversations going on. And he said, "It sounds like you're describing some sort of mad nightclub." I said, "Peter, that's not far off it. We want people to queue to get in. We want it to be so exciting about the fact we're going to have footballers in the sports department from Chelsea scoring goals. We're going to have goals from, Stringfellows pole dancing in the window. All this mad stuff." This was back then. said, "A nightclub, I like it." He said, "Yeah, it wouldn't be a nightclub then, would it be?" And he looked at me and said, "Be sort of the ultimate day club." And the ultimate day club to this day is the thematic platform for Selfridges. It's the ultimate place to go, the ultimate day club. What should we do on Saturday? Dress up and go to Selfridges. And the rest, as they say, is history. So,
Questions, ladies and gentlemen? Questions to start with. Another round of applause at the end. Madame.
I want to react to your last point about semantic platform and question you about the importance of metaphors in branding. Metaphors.
Metaphors, that's what I thought.
Metaphors?
Yes.
That's a good question. It's sort of analogy.
Metaphors in branding, Steve.
Yeah. Do you have any in mind? Trying to think. What sort of parallels with other people and what they do, or what other brands are? Yeah, I know what a metaphor is. I'm trying to think of one that's specifically used in a branded context. You see them. Yeah, I guess. Well, it's probably more into the... Right, okay. Very important point. A brand is a brand. A campaign, an advertising campaign, they come and go. The brand is the person. It's a bit like you... Right, a bit like you deciding what you're going to wear in the morning, okay? And if you think of ads at Christmas, they're always metaphorical relative to the good intent of the season, as opposed to being necessary directly at them.
So I'm talking about the identity of the brand and its expression in a way which is not just about the function, but the emotional dimension of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what brings you to it, rather than what is the problem you try to resolve? What is the metaphoric, poetic dimension of it?
Yeah. Well,
that is so crucial in the decision point.
yeah. Well, yes. So remember, we're working for Dulcis. You know, Dulcis, the shoe company, and they would have these beautiful photographs of shoes on wonderful models, and they would have the male model, he wasn't wearing the shoes, he was just the guy on the arm. They would have him there, but you'd never see his face. He could be anybody you wanted him to be. And the sort of subtext message being, be the girl, buy the shoes, get the guy. You know, so it's those hidden messages are fundamental in branding. Actually, it's really what they're all about. They're not so direct.
What about, Steve, that alcohol advert, Carling Black Label? I think he drinks Carling Black Label. Now, I don't apologise for any Germans in the room, but when the young man with the nice blonde on the balcony, all the Germans are going out to put their towels on the deck chair. Out comes the Union Jack towel, throws across the swimming pool, and hits the best deck chair. I think he drinks Carling Black Label. Is that a metaphor?
Yeah, it's a rather bad one because
I love the advert.
I love the ad. The beer's awful though.
Oh, it's awful, yeah, but the advert was great.
It would work far better in a nice United Europe way by having a German beer and put the two together. Maybe the girlfriend's German. The two towels roll out together.
Quite. We're talking about 20 years ago.
Quite inclusive.
Just a minute, David. Harry Turnbull first.
Thank you. Very simple question. If you could work with one brand now, what would it be and why?
Meghan Markle.
It's not Meghan Markle. No offence, Meghan.
The king.
Oh gosh, I could work with one brand now. Who would it be? Yeah.
If she was still alive, what about the Queen, the late Queen? That's a great brand.
I did meet her a couple of times.
Yeah, great lady.
Yeah, she was absolutely charming. Yeah. Yeah, the royal family. Oh, gosh, that'd be exhausting. I wouldn't necessarily go for that one. I'd rather them carry on doing their job. But come back
Georgina
to it.
Badin.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for that talk. It was
That's
really,
all.
really interesting. I had a question about two different brands, and I wanted your opinion on the difference between Burger King and McDonald's. If you look at Burger King in the US, they've been really successful, and a lot of people argue that actually their burgers are better, question mark. But in the UK, they've not been nearly as successful as McDonald's. And I wondered, why do you think that is?
I think it's the way they portray themselves over here, because they are very difficult at that level of QSR, quick service restaurant, at that QSR level. You don't say fast food anymore. QSR at that level, it's about how well it's communicated. If you look at actual research, blind tasting of the two, the Burger King ones are preferred by customers. But that means they're better for you, I'm not sure. But they are preferred. I just don't think they've had quite the penetration over here or quite the messaging skill. I mean, McDonald's chuck money at it. 2012, it was the first place to open in the Olympic Park. Bit of a contradiction, really, having Mackie D's with the medals. But I think it's just the way they're communicated. So, and the other thing we don't get over here is if you go to the States, it's remarkable how much loyalty there is to local brands. You In-N-Out burgers in California. A lot of people there won't go anywhere else. Yeah.
I prefer dining SW3, Georgie.
So do I.
Great restaurant. Thank you, Rara. Dr. David.
So I think just an aside that Burger King are actually not owned by the same company here as they are in America. So the whole thing.
That's a good point. They were once owned by a UK company.
They were owned by a listed UK company, and I don't think they're under the same ownership. There's obviously some sort of licensing going on,
it could be.
but I think that's the answer to your question.
And it's
they
the same.
marketed it as well as they do.
Yeah.
It's the same as Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Correct.
The franchisors are often different per country.
But that wasn't my question. My question is this, and I agree. Thank you for a great talk. I think it's been one of the best we've had this year.
Thank you. Did write that down.
It's on camera.
But what I wondered, and just my friend said, it's a simple thing too. When you are working for a brand, do you do some sort of brand confidence by using that brand whilst you work? So, for instance, if you're working for British Airways, do you fly in on a British Airways plane? And do you think that's important? That when you're working with someone, you can say, "I love your brand," and therefore have confidence that I will make your brand work.
The short answer to that is yes. And a
How
number
do
of
you do
levels.
that living in Croydon?
Well, you're not far from Gatwick.
But the short answer is yes, and it's a very good question. I once worked behind the ticket desk at it was Terminal 4 then, whilst we were working on Terminal 5 for British Airways. And it was fascinating. People would come over and go, I haven't got my ticket to go to check in. To which the answer was, well, you don't need a ticket. I just give you your name and your passport. I said, no, I've got to have a piece of paper. And I remember sitting there at the ticket desk trying to explain to this gentleman he didn't. When a nice British Airways lady put her arm on my shoulder and went, here you are, sir. Wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to him. He said, it's all about looking after them, she said. And that was fantastic. In another example of that, living the brand, we worked on a project for Etihad, and we were working on the midfield terminus, it now just finished over in Abu Dhabi. And they said, look, if you really need to understand this properly, because we want you to integrate the experience on the ground in the airport to the quality of the experience in the air, we need you to fly out for the first briefing meeting economy, then we'll fly you back business. Then you can come over again next time first, and then we'll send you back in the residence. And the residence is like the front half of an A380 with showers and God knows, just me in it, So they really wanted you to live the brand.
Prompting David here, Dr. David. Last question from me. Have you ever refused to work for a brand? Or will you refuse to work for a brand based on ethics or not necessarily price and refusal?
Okay, so...
Are there any brands that you have refused, Steve?
At the end of the day, no. But we did come up with three brands, three categories we thought that wouldn't be appropriate. But we were never offered a work from one of them, so it didn't really matter. The first one was anybody selling guns. The next one was anybody selling tobacco. And then the third one was Manchester City, because my business partner was a Manchester United fanatic. I'm not a football man, so that didn't really matter. But the first two, strangely enough, ended up working with British American Tobacco on Dunhill's most exclusive cigars, just on a flagship store for that. Yeah. Somehow they didn't feel as bad. And we work for Purdy and Boss guns, but that's for going out and shotguns in the country. So not, they weren't sawing the barrels off and going around that in a web. So
quickly, David.
It's about rebranding. You can get some products, very strong brands, and I'm thinking of something like Guinness,
yes,
which has gone through. Guinness is good for you. Nobody knows that anymore because now it comes to everyone in ways. How important is it to think to rebrand your item every so often so that it gets a new feel to it?
I think it is. You've got to move with the times. You've got to evolve with them. Kentucky Fried Chicken became KFC to get the fried out of the name. To change it. It was deliberate that way. It wasn't changing the frying, but it was to slightly avoid the name that way. And sometimes you've got to, I think it is to reflect the times you're living in, to move things on. But it's best to do it gently so people hardly notice it's happening. Natural evolution.
Steve, we've long overdue our time slot, but no one's left the audience, and that's because it was such as Dr. David says, one of the best talks we've had this year and for a long time. A hard act to follow on the 7th of July, our last talk, but they'll be competing for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Collis.
Thank you very much.